I'm gonna tell you this right now. This is one of the greatest lines, phrases that were ever told to me when I was a young kid and I was knuckleheading, and football was going to be taken away from me. All right, by a coach I had named Walt Saborio. Okay, he said, Lance, he said, listen, because I had just screwed up. I just made a knucklehead decision, and he goes, listen, he said, this is what's going to happen. All right, he's like, what you did. All right, you have to understand, it's going to get worse before it gets better. All right. Like, this is the initial, we all just found out it's going to get worse before it gets better, but it will get better. And so it will get better, but it's going to get worse. It's about to get worse.
Oh, God.
I turned the radio on just as the first half is entering into its closing minutes. The defense gives up yet another big George Kittle catch, and I hear the announcer say the explosive plays are haunting the Bears. What are we supposed to make of this game and of the Bears as a whole? On the one hand, it's been a pretty chaotic few weeks, to say the least. Flus gets fired. Thomas Brown is now on to his third different coaching job in under a month. I've taken a midterm and turned in a final project, and I'm now studying for a final exam. And we've been in the midst of new, unfathomable ways to lose games for weeks on end. So, of course, we're going to get busted by the 49ers. On the other hand, we fired Flus because of our lack of ability to close out close games, and the team had consistently just looked unprepared. And then on Sunday, we had a first half with 4 yards of total offense, and over the course of the game had maybe 2 good complete drives, if we're being generous. 6+ weeks ago, I asked, it can't get worse, can it? And we're learning that for the Bears, the depths of darkness is deeper than the ocean. 7th straight loss, now sitting at 4-9. So, what did we learn about the Bears this week?
Man, that was bad, huh? That was a little deflating. I think going into that, you kind of had a little bit of hope of, all right, new staff, players seem juiced up. Eberflus can't botch any late game decisions. I mean, I guess the good news is there was no late game decisions to botch, so there's that. But I think we learned that maybe this Thomas Brown, Eric Washington thing was maybe a little bit of optimism that, didn't really have a lot of substance behind it. Brown looked and sounded the part, for the most part, leading up to the game. He's saying the right things, players seemed to really buy into what he was doing, but then wasn't a great start, didn't look like they had a lot of fight or fire, right? Isn't that, did you get that? It just come out like they didn't want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, the San Francisco scored very quickly, and
Yep, wide open again, just like that end of that Minnesota game. We were talking about, like, how are these guys so wide open? And they were wide open again. So I don't know. Maybe Washington just was calling the wrong plays. Maybe guys just have checked out. But the defense was a shell of itself. Compared to like the first 5 games that they played, and you look at the last 2-3 games they played, it's been like, oof. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if Brisker makes that much of a difference, right? Because they're mostly back. Missing Billings is huge because their run defense wasn't great to begin with, and now without Billings, it's even worse. But Tyreek Stevenson looks unplayable after that Hail Mary. Like, his confidence is gone. He looks unplayable. Even Jalen's getting beat. Gordon's missing tackles that he normally makes. It just feels. Edmonds had an awful game. He was just lost in coverage. He was late to get off blocks. He didn't play very well. So, the defense looked bad. I think they gave up like a score on like San Francisco's it seemed like first 4 drives, and it wasn't even like that contested. It just felt way too easy for the Niners. And meanwhile, the Bears offense, bunch of 3-and-outs. I think they showed the Bears had like 2 yards or something nearing the end of the first half. Caleb just getting sacked on third downs. Looked like he was scared to sling it. So I don't know. And our guys are dropping the ball, right? Keenan had a drop. DJ had a drop.
Cole
Cole
had one on the
in
2-point. That was,
conversion.
yeah.
And you're just like, man, this is sloppy. It's sloppy. And they had 10 days to prepare for this garbage.
It was funny, like, like I had group chats where there was like, it was very positive, and I think it was positive because it's like new voice, change. The guy who's been kind of like helping Caleb grow over the last couple games is
Mm-hmm.
now at the head, and that's exciting. And there's like this, like, all right, maybe, yeah, and that like new coach energy. And I was talking to one of my coworkers today, and it's like maybe they used that new coach bump a couple weeks ago when Thomas Brown took over as the OC, when
Yeah.
Caleb played well. And yeah, it's like you look back and now with watching this game, and I don't know, it's one game, it's in the midst of bad everything,
Yeah.
and so,
Yeah.
but it's like, does was it better? You end up reading so much into football because every game seems like so much matters. There's only a small amount of games, but like,
Mm-hmm.
was it better that Thomas Brown was actually in Caleb's ear from above and just
Yeah.
kind of got to focus on him in the offense?
Yeah.
And I think.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair point, and people have made that point. Like Thomas Brown likes to be up in the booth where he can see the full field. He's not doing that. You can't coach from the booth, right? You have to be down on the field. So does that change his purview? Does that change, how he sees the field? And like you said, he can't dedicate as much time with Caleb. So what does that coaching look like? Now Caleb's got a new offensive coordinator. This dude's played like 12 games and he's had 3 offensive coordinators so far. He's probably going to have a 4th when next season starts, right?
My God,
Like
dude.
if I was that dude, I mean, I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. Well, I hope he does, but I hope he doesn't take this part seriously. I would ask for a trade, man. Like this organization is a clown show and they don't know what they're doing. I would be like, get me out of here. What I mean, fourth offensive coordinator in 1 year. Like, I don't think that's ever happened before. That is like, wow, just astronomical levels of stupidity and incompetence.
Does this feel like in recent history to you the on a level of chaotic seasons of just like lots of things happening? Like, does this seem like pretty high? I imagine it's high up there on the list of just like so much shit happening because you have seasons where just they're bad, but like it's kind of consistent.
Yeah, it's like recency bias, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You always think this one's the worst. You know what it reminds me of? You ever watch Office Space?
Yes.
You remember when Peter's hypnotized and that doctor guy's like, "What about today, Peter? Is today the worst day of your life?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." Like every day seems like the worst day. Every year seems worse than the year before.
It's just like really, how do you, yeah, how do you just keep your head straight? Like there's
It's
just,
hard.
yeah,
It's
man.
hard. And Bears fans are defeated, right? You blame Shane Waldron, he's fired. And like, yeah, he wasn't the real problem. Eberflus is a real problem. Okay. You blame Matt Eberflus, he's fired. And they just keep on sucking. And now you're just like, Ryan Poles is the problem. Fire Ryan Poles. Okay. They might do that. It's just they're going to run out of people to blame. You're going to eventually get to George McCaskey, and you can't fire George McCaskey. So he's going to once again set up a line of people for you to blame instead, and then you're going to start at the end of the line again and chop, 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 get to the head. He's going to refill it, and you're going to chop, 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 right? You're just going to like, it never ends. And that's the frustrating part. Sorry, people listening to this podcast. This is some real Sophie's Choice shit that we're going through right now.
I was telling you all before we started, but a friend of mine had texted me and said, "Would you still be watching this game if you didn't have to do a podcast on it, dude?" And it's like, I mean, maybe kind of, but like, it's really getting pretty unwatchable. Like,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
if there, it's not interesting. It's You know what's like? Well, I could feel it in myself, and this isn't good, but there were points like where they were getting smoked at the end, and like Jonathan Owens got a pick and he was dancing, and I was like, bro, y'all are getting smoked, dude. Like, don't dance. And even like Rome, and I fucking like Rome so much. Even on his second touchdown, it's 13-31 with 11 minutes left and no chance, and he's dancing, and he should. Touchdowns are very, very hard, but you're just like, bro, come on, man. Like, don't dance. You guys are so bad. Just be
So
serious.
bad.
And I want people to be happy, and I want Rome to be happy, and he looked great, and I'm not even trying to shit on him, but it's
Hey,
like,
you know what, man? Like this goes back to when I said when the Bears beat the Jaguars, and I was telling people were saying, "Oh, it's just the Jaguars." I'm like, no, don't feel bad. Enjoy it because you don't know when it's going to be taken away from you. Like if you know, Rome, enjoy it. You don't know when you're going to score a touchdown again. Might not happen for another. They went like what 6 games without scoring a touchdown in a row. It could be another six
yeah.
games. So yeah, go dance, have fun. It's nothing else to really look forward to after that. The Caleb Rome thing is really like the only thing to look forward to. And to answer your question from before, man, I probably would have turned it off at halftime if I didn't have to sound intelligent or quasi intelligent for this podcast. So
It's, I mean, what I said, so for me, because I liked how they came out in the second half. Credit to the
yeah,
adjustments. That
yeah,
first drive was like really good. It was a great drive, led to a beautiful touchdown. Roamed like with his feet was amazing. But it was when Caleb got that second fumble, it was just like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna win because they were like kind of the momentum seemed moving. Like if they score in if they score on that drive, then it's like a game if they can stop the Niners. And after
right.
that fumble, I was like, oh, and that was somewhere in the middle of the third. I don't even know where it was, but like just
They
kind
could
of
have had a couple more of those drives in the first half too, if not for some of those drops, right? I mean, Keenan dropped one, DJ dropped one. Who knows if those drives would have gotten extended if those balls had been caught, right? And so that's kind of tough too. But yeah, Caleb held onto the ball a little long in some instances. In some instances, Braxton Jones just gets bull rushed and defenders are falling into Caleb's lap. So I think we at least answered the Thomas Brown question. And I kind of thought this going into the game that I don't think there's anything that Thomas Brown could do to be on this staff next year.
you're
Aside
talking
from
about
like, okay, if they win the last 5 games and they blow teams out, obviously yes, but it's not like they're looking for reasons to keep him. If they went like 3-2 or 2-3 and you're like, oh, it looks okay, I don't think they might like fake that they're interested and do the interview, but I don't think Kevin Warren wants anything to do with anybody that was there before he got there. I think he's trying to heave ho and do his own thing. So
so Thomas Brown is yeah, it's a kind of a, I guess he's just playing for future, like this is interviewing for other teams to just be like, look what I'm capable of,
yeah,
assuming that's, yeah, because I heard that a couple times, like, if he wins out, it's going to be hard to like not keep him, but that's like
but
a,
he's never
yeah,
going to, right? I mean,
yeah.
the team's not good enough to do that. So they're basically setting him up for failure and then using that failure to be like, all right, well, you're obviously not the guy, right? So it's just like he's going to be another scapegoat. And so I think Warren's just going to move on from him. The interesting thing will be what Warren does with polls at the end of the season. I'm very interested in that.
And Warren came after Pulse.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
Poles and Eberflus. It's a little history lesson here. Poles and Eberflus both came on in 2022. It's funny because McCaskey and his outside consulting firm had Eberflus as a finalist for the head coaching job before they even hired Poles. But they didn't line up the contracts. Poles' contract was for 4 years. Eberflus's contract was for 5 years. So Eberflus is actually longer tenured than Poles' for whatever reason, even though they started at the like 2 days apart from each other. So with Eberflus gone, it shows you the McCaskies are going to eat the last 2 years of Flus's deal. That leads me to believe they wouldn't mind eating the last year of Poles' deals because we know Poles doesn't have an extension. At least I don't think he does. So I think it means one of two things, right? It means that Poles is going to be actively involved in the next head coaching hire. And then what Kevin Warren would probably do is line up Poles' extension with the contract for the new coach, which would probably line up with Caleb's rookie deal. So Caleb's got 4 years left on his rookie deal. The new head coach would probably sign a 4-year deal. and they would extend Poles out the exact same amount. So all those guys would be on the same timeline. That would make sense. Now we know that McCaskies don't do things that make sense, but just bear with me here. That's one option, right? But the other option is Warren could be like, this dude has 1 year left on his deal. I'm going to bring in a new coach. I'm going to line up a new GM with the new head coach. I'm going to let this new GM come in, my guy, get his coach, and these will all be my people. And then they'll line up those timelines with Caleb's timeline. So I don't know. I know he said Poles is safe, but if this thing goes real south real fast, which is a high probability that it will, because I don't see the Bears being favored in any of the remaining games. I don't know. I think Warren could nix Poles just to line that up again.
Whenever anyone says anybody is safe, it's like that's a lie, because other than I can't, everybody is tradable, cuttable, replaceable, fireable. Those words are basically empty. But yeah, which of the, I mean, are you like, where are you with Poles, assuming the Bears kind of play, even if they win a few games through the rest of the season, they kind of, I mean, what can they do over the next 4 games that can really shift our feelings of kind of understanding who they truly are? But I mean, what are your...
It's hard, man. Like, yes, this roster has holes, but I also don't think they've played up to their standard. I mean, you are fluky Hail Mary and a tipped field goal away from having 2 more wins, right? And I saw this, I put an article about this out on Tap Sports, is somebody put out a graphic, if you flipped every NFL team's 1-score games, what their records would be. The Bears would have the 2nd seed in the NFC at 8-4. Like, they're like right there. And I mean, some of these are getting blown out, fine, but they just executed so poorly down the stretch. And I don't think that is on a general manager so much, right? Like, he buys the groceries. If the chef makes a terrible meal, it's not because the groceries are bad, right? It's because the guy can't cook, So I don't know. We need a new chef. And while I've been a Poles defender, it's getting hard to do that. I mean, he really needs to focus this offseason on building that offensive line and defensive line. He's been ignoring it for way too long. That was one of his biggest mistakes. The other one was putting together a terrible coaching staff. I mean, and then doubling down on it. Like, they've had like 9 different coaches in the last 2 years, between ones that were dismissed and fired midseason and replaced. And it's a disaster. And I think Warren sees that. And that's why you saw Warren at the press conference being like, yeah, Ryan's the guy that's going to make this decision, but I'm the one that's talking about Ryan making the decision. So you guys kind of know that I'm the one that's going to be making this decision, right? I think he doesn't want to look like an idiot. I think he's got a huge ego. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. Now, I don't think Ryan Poles is a big fan of that. And so there's probably going to be some friction there too. I could see maybe not even a firing at the end of the season, but maybe a mutually like agreed separation could play out too.
With Ryan Poles?
Yeah, and the Bears, yeah. Because there's a report coming out, and I'm actually writing an article about this right now, I was on Waddle and Sylvie this morning where a report came out where Poles took the GM job because he liked the idea of reporting directly to George McCaskey. He liked that autonomy that he had, and he liked having the owner's ear directly. And so he didn't sign up for this Kevin Warren power hungry middleman type guy that's going to like, no, you don't talk to George. I talk to George. You talk to me and I'll relay it. Right. I don't think Ryan Poles signed up for that. I don't think he's a big fan of that. You can see his body language was terrible during the press conference.
Yeah.
I think he's lost his desire to be there. And, we'll see we'll see it play out in the off season. Like, I think you'll know who's calling the shots in the off season based on the candidates and how they interview and the timing and what each person says. And I think we'll have a pretty good idea of whether this guy's going to be around or not.
Yeah. The drama continues, man.
It is, it's bad. And none of it's going to change until George McCaskey, gets rid of the team, which, I mean, if you were born on third base, why would you ever deviate from that? Right. It's like, they make him money and he doesn't have any other skills. It's not like Jerry Jones or David Tepper, who were billionaires and then bought a team. So they're good at other stuff. And they'd be like, all right, this was fun for a while, but I'm going to go make more money doing the thing that I'm really good at. George doesn't have a thing he's really good at. So he's like, I got to just keep doing this. This is why I'm relevant. It's unfortunate for us because the Bears fan base is ultimately the ones that are being held hostage by all this.
So okay, so as we close out this game, what's like sort of a positive takeaway that you took from the game, and then kind of maybe lead us into like kind of what's something things that to kind of like we're gonna watch and we're gonna angry watch and sad watch and desperate watch and all that shit watch, but like what are like why what's the little light of hope that somewhere exists within all of this?
What? No, what positive? Something positive. I don't know. Watch because I don't know. You have the free time on Sunday, and maybe they'll pull an upset. Seems doubtful. I guess Caleb is like, he could break Kramer's record, I think, for most passing yards in a season. I think he needs to average, well, probably higher now. I think he needs to average like 245 or something like that for the remaining games to break that mark, the 3,900 something mark. He only threw for like, I don't know, not that many yards. I think less than 200 yards last game. So it probably has to up it a little bit more, but you can kind of look for that. Maybe, I mean, look, it was Thomas Brown's first game as head coach and they got absolutely whooped. Maybe he'll make some adjustments. I guess you could look out for that to see if he's going to make some, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Cause like I said, I don't think any of those guys are going to be coaching on this team next year anyway. So
this is like watching like fucking summer league ball. You're just like watching people do stuff to do stuff, and like, these guys aren't gonna be here.
right.
You know what's a bad idea is to put a shit show on Monday night, which is what we have coming up next. The Bears are Monday night. And
Yeah. I mean, I kind of root for the Bears to get embarrassed on national TV these days because it makes George uncomfortable. And I know he hates because he's got that, like we talked about, he's got that like little brother syndrome and inferiority complex syndrome because he's just, he's not a guy that like earned his way into an ownership, right? And so he feels he has to constantly prove he belongs. And these national games constantly prove that he doesn't. So it'll be interesting. I do think Caleb gets amped up for these national games, nationally televised games. So it'll be fun to see him bring his A game, but at least your Sunday will be stress-free. So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. There is some like, as we kind of finish up today's episode, it is interesting to see like, just kind of watching different players sort of how they respond to this. And there's different things happening in someone early on in their career. And it's like, there's still probably, I imagine, not even I imagine, but I just, I can assume, but it's like, there's still like a level of like, I still have to go out there. I still want to look good. I still want to like hold myself and try. And, especially early on. And, that is interesting to see some
I mean, and I do think there's going to be a lot of defensive turnover on this roster. They've got like 3 or 4 blue chip players on defense, and everybody else is like average. And talked ourselves into them maybe playing a little over their skis,
Yeah.
And so I think you will see some defensive overhaul because they just need to get better. They need to get better in the trenches. They need to get better at. Edmonds has been brutal. Edwards has been good, but Edmonds has been brutal. And I mean, I don't know if you can cut him because the cap hit's high, but like something needs to happen with that inside linebacker position as well. And safety, is Brisker going to play? Is he not going to play? They need to replace that position too. And Byard had a terrible game. He's been okay, right? He's average to below average.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that need upgrading.
The depths of darkness continue, my dog.
Yeah, man, what a ride we've been on, huh?
We'll be back next week a little bit later in the day than we traditionally are with the Bears Monday night game. But for Samir Patel, I'm Chirag Rathod. We are the Bears in the neighborhood, and we will catch y'all next week.
I'm sorry, Saskatchewan.